Originally, Muramasa began its life on the Nintendo Wii, and whilst that was an incredible game in its own right, the Vita port managed to expand upon many aspects of the game and ultimately offers up a much better experience. Now it's essentially a 2D side-scrolling action RPG that sees you taking on the role of two separate characters. You get to choose from either of the two, which offer up completely different campaigns and playstyles. Now when it comes to gameplay, the combat is very fluid and extremely fun. You have 3 weapons which can be switched between on the fly, and each of them have a spirit meter which acts like a cross between a fighting game special bar and an RPG mana pool. The swords are divided into 2 types based on length. The short swords are fast, and long swords are slow but much more powerful. In terms of combos, the potential is there for some great stuff. You have a basic 3-button press combo at your disposal, as well as a few directional options, such as an uppercut that acts as a launcher and opens up aerial combo chains, as well as a crouching attack and air dashes, which can all be comboed into as well. But what diversifies the combat and saves it from becoming stale is a combination of the special attacks known in this game as special arts, and the fact that your swords will break if you block too much, and once it does, it becomes absolutely useless. The combat is extremely rewarding and easily the best part of the entire adventure, so if you're looking for a solid action RPG to get into, with plenty of customization and character growth, Muramasa has got it by the boatload. The PlayStation Vita was a literal goldmine when it came to RPGs, but like many consoles, a few go by unnoticed, with Orishika Tainted Bloodlines being one of them. The first thing that will strike you about the game are the incredible visuals that take on a sort of watercolor aesthetic. The second being the outstanding turn-based combat that grants the player a ton of options when it comes to dealing with enemies. It allows you to perform single or team-based actions that all contribute to the trust built between you and your party throughout the adventure. And as with most RPGs, a pretty robust leveling up system is in place as well, that allows you to accumulate experience points in order to progress your effectiveness in battle. But what really helps Orishika stand out is its huge emphasis upon family. It all revolves around your character having the ability to marry several deities throughout the journey. By doing so, it allows you to conceive children and then ultimately use them in battle once they come of age. Sadly, they don't last very long, and you'll find yourself going through several generations before the game is ended. But due to this, there is plenty of variety, thanks to each family member being entirely unique, with each of them bringing their own strengths and weaknesses to the table. If you've exhausted the usual RPGs on the system and are looking to get into something a bit different, Orishika is a solid choice. Murasaki Baby is a rather unique platformer that combines the visual style of the Tim Burton films with some seriously engaging gameplay. Now it all revolves around a little girl who peacefully awakes from her slumber in an unknown place, with her only goal being to locate her mother. As the player, it's your job to traverse the dangerous environment and ultimately reunite them. The game is all about doing things differently, right down to the way you lead the girl from one place to another. By using your finger to hold her hand on the front screen, you guide the little girl to each area through each door that leads to the next. If you pull too hard, she'll stumble, while pulling too slow could leave you tugging her along the entire journey. It's a really delicate balance that at first is kind of hard to get the hang of, but it all soon becomes second nature. Another twist to the game is the complete lack of a health bar. Instead, the little girl has a heart-shaped balloon that she holds onto during gameplay. The balloon acts as the perfect replacement for a health bar, tasking you with the responsibility to make sure it does not pop and to making sure it doesn't fly away or the little girl will lose her shit. Making your way through the game will see you coming across various children who are all in some sort of a pickle of their own. In order to help them as well, you're given a selection of balloons. Each of them offer up new and exciting ways to make your way through the world. There's so much more than being simple power-ups, mainly due to the way they completely alter the mechanics of the world you occupy. They offer the chance to completely change the environment around you, and you're even able to use the rear touchpad to make it rain or cause a gust of wind. To be fair, this is one game that takes full advantage of the various hardware features that the Vita offers, and more importantly, in meaningful ways. If you're in the mood for trying something completely unique, this is a great choice. When it comes to gaming on the go, more often than not what makes for the perfect type of experience is those that are incredibly easy to pick up and play in short bursts. One of the best examples of this on the PlayStation Vita has to be Whoa Dave. It's essentially a platformer that shares much in common with the likes of Mario and sees the player having to clear each stage of enemies through the use of various eggs, skulls and blocks that litter the level. The eggs actually hatch enemies and can be used as a projectile weapon. The skulls are purely combat based, acting as both a missile and a landmine, and finally the blue blocks, which have the power to clear all of the enemies on screen at once. Now the main objective is to simply acquire as much currency as you can. Thankfully, upon defeating an enemy, they will often drop coins, which can be scooped up before they disappear. To be fair, you're probably thinking to yourself, this all sounds painfully easy, but there are aspects of Whoa Dave that manage to crank up the difficulty. The first being the levels themselves. As you progress through them, a lava pit slowly rises from the bottom, making it much tougher to navigate, but it also affects the enemies as well. If they hit the lava, they quickly evolve into more formidable foes. To make matters worse, the longer you hold on to an egg or skull, it will actually start to drain your life, and with only 3 hit points, death is a painful and all too common occurrence in the game. The real fun of Whoa Dave, however, lies in how all of these mechanics mix together and create a game that forces the player to make decisions in the blink of an eye. If you never got round to playing this one and are up for the challenge, Whoa Dave would make a welcome addition to your collection. When it comes to racing games on the Vita, you've got a ton of solid choices, from Wipeout to Ridge Racer and Need for Speed, but one option that often gets overlooked is a little game known as Air Race Speed. This low-budget title began life on smartphones, but feels a lot more suited to a physical-based system like the Vita. What makes it work is its incredible sense of speed that will instantly remind you of the long-forgotten franchise F-Zero. You'll find yourself sprinting through tunnels and caves, attempting to avoid impending obstacles that often appear right under your nose. The developer uses every trick in the book to make you feel like you're moving with momentum. Lights whiz by and tunnels tighten around your craft, with beams and other structures becoming a blur as you flash past. But this heavy emphasis on speed is only half of the story, because just as impressive is the way in which you'll find yourself progressing through the game. It's all based around the accumulation of stars, and unlocking them means that you'll gradually gain access to new vehicles. And while playing does feel fast right from the off, returning to the first craft several hours later will shock you with just how sluggish it is. You simply just get used to the blistering pace. Now, while on the surface it is a racing game, it's not the type that sees you facing down against a range of opponents. It's more aimed at beating the clock in a more time attack approach to the genre. Most of the levels see you attempting to beat a lap time, but there are also endless stages and some more freeform environments which see you flying through rings and take on a checkpoint system. Obviously, due to this, the overall replay value might seem quite slim. A selection of additional objectives and tasks are included that help prolong the admittedly pick up and play nature of the experience. Overall, Air Race Speed is a truly pleasant surprise, and while it doesn't quite match up to the various races on the handheld, it goes down swinging and provides another reason to keep that Vita in your pocket. If there is one game on the PlayStation Vita that deserves a hell of a lot more attention than it initially got, it has to be Akiba's Trip Undead and Undressed. This is a truly criminally underrated Vita game. It feels like the perfect mix of beat-em-ups, open-world RPGs and visual novels, and if any of those genres appeal to you, you'll instantly feel right at home. Now, the gameplay is simple. You pummel your opponents with a range of attacks to defeat them, but the kicker is that you don't simply just hit them, you need to strip them. Basically, without spoiling anything, your main enemies are artificial emo otaku vampires that drain people's energy. Believe me, I couldn't make this shit up if I tried. Now, character customization plays a huge role in the game, but with a bit more variety than usual. You can choose not just your clothing, but how you walk, and even how your finishers look and behave. Now, the most impressive fact is the game's setting. It is almost a perfect recreation of Akihabara. Like, seriously, they used actual photographs and maps to produce the game during development. The locations are all true to life, and seeing it realized on the portable screen is incredible. Now, as with any other RPG, combat is at the center of the experience, and here it is simple but fun fun and has some unique aspects. You have 3 attack buttons corresponding to high, medium and low attacks. You have a certain amount of time to land another hit after your previous one to make the combo gauge rise. If it goes up past a certain number, your attacks start doing more damage until the hit counter falls back to 0. Once you damage an area enough, you can take that clothing piece off, and depending on how damaged it is, you'll either tear it off right away or have to try and force it off through a mashing prompt to drain more energy from the piece. If you've exhausted the usual suspects on the Vita and are looking for something new to jump into, this is it. Macross Delta Scramble is based on the popular Macross anime and follows the 2 factions of Chaos and Windmere across a wide range of missions which chronicle the events of the anime show, but as you would guess, it instead allows the player to take part in the proceedings. A huge cast of characters make the cut, as well as vehicles that have the ability to transform into flying machines as well as ground-based mechs. You'll find yourself switching between the 2 quite often as you try to tackle the onslaught of enemies the game throws your way. Thankfully, combat is one area where Macross Delta Scramble really begins to shine. As I mentioned, there's a wide variety of machines to jump into, but to go along with them, there's a diverse amount of weaponry as well that can all be fully customized before each skirmish. The massive amount of options allow you to experiment with several ways to play the game. May that be just running in, guns are blazing, or taking a more tactical approach, the game has got you covered. To top this off, you also have access to support pilots that accompany you on the field, and they all lend their own unique special abilities, which can really help turn the tide of a battle. Once certain conditions have been met, each of them can be performed but only last for a predetermined amount of time. Most of them fill the screen in a spectacular fashion and absolutely devastate anything in your path. Macross Delta Scramble is a must for fans of the show, and even those who may not have heard of it before. The engaging pick up and play manner of the game is something that should not be missed. When you first set your eyes on TXK, it's so easy to simply pass it off as an indie game that harkens back to the arcade shooter days of old, but doing so would be instantly dismissing the significance behind it. Coming from Jeff Minter, the man responsible for the extremely enjoyable remake of Tempest, TXK feels like a natural progression of everything that was present within the Atari Jaguar favourite, and more than honours the 20-year legacy that precedes it. Now, the best thing about TXK is that it's really accessible. You can jump straight into the action, which is easy to pick up and play. It's here that you'll learn that you're in for some good old-fashioned arcade fun, as each level finds you moving a ship along the edge of an angular shape that has 3D-like aspects. As opposed to a flat piece of geometry, lines extend downward from points of the object, which enemies use to climb up to your ship. To prevent them from doing so, you've got to maneuver your craft around the edge of the shape and blast any approaching nasties. In addition to the several enemies you'll come across, a series of power-ups such as extra firepower, and even what is quite possibly the best addition, which comes in the form of a companion who can help you shoot down targets. As with most arcade classics, achieving the highest score possible is the name of the game, as well as several collectibles dotted around each level. Now, the controls can seem a bit tricky, but after some time with the game, it soon becomes an absolute breeze to play. But that's not to say it'll be an easy ride, especially towards some of the later levels that morph and form around you as you play. TXK really comes to life and offers up one of the most rewarding games on the PlayStation Vita. With the Vita, there are many adventures that never got the chance to reach a wider audience, mainly due to the eventual failure of the handheld. One of these is Tokyo Xanadu. Now, it all takes place in a quiet suburb of Tokyo and sees the player assuming the part of a high school student known as Kao. One night he spots his classmate being tailed by 2 suspicious people and decides to intervene. The result sees him being thrown into the underworld, a place where monsters known as greed exist. It's here within this place that he discovers his classmate's special powers and realizes his own. Spiritual metal weapons called soul devices that can be used to fight these monsters. Now, when it comes to gameplay, there's 2 main aspects of the game. The first sees you roaming the city, and the second fighting in one of the many dungeons that comprise the adventure. But what helps Tokyo Xanadu really stand out is the combat. It's here where it is different from many other RPGs. Now, it does use a real-time system, but each character takes on their own characteristics thanks to their soul device. The player has a blade whip that is pretty quick and has some decent maneuvers, while other characters might be more magic based with staves or orbs, or swing harder with giant blades or fists, and even projectile based weapons. Since there's such a diverse amount of enemies in the game, it's up to you to decide how to optimize the characters for each dungeon run, so you're able to customize your team properly beforehand. Overall, you'll be hard pressed to find a more engaging RPG than Tokyo Xanadu. The dialogue is packed, side quests are plentiful. This is a game that deserves playing. Street Fighter X Tekken is a crossover between two of the biggest fighting franchises ever. Given that Street Fighter is mainly played in 2D, whereas Tekken is a 3D fighter, one series had to make a shift. Here, Tekken characters were designed to play on a 2D plane. The adjustment was done very well. Both the Street Fighter and Tekken characters are well executed. Anyone who has played Marvel vs. Capcom will be familiar with how this game plays. It has the traditional 2D gameplay mechanics like Street Fighter, with an added element of teammates. Every character has a list of special abilities. In addition, you have a cross-gauge meter that fills up by dealing damage, and once it's filled, you can unleash a variety of special moves which deal massive amounts of damage. Now, the team aspect goes deeper than just switching out characters. Not only can you change mid-battle, but you can also switch out at the end of a combo by finishing it with a launch move. Overall, the team mechanic has a lot going for it. To be fair, it is really similar to many other team fighting games, but it's incredibly fun in its own right. As with most fighting games, Street Fighter X Tekken features plenty of modes to play. The story mode has you pick your team and sees you battling your way through pairings of characters until you face off against the final boss of one of the franchises. In challenge mode, you have trials and missions. Now, trials are really just an extension of the tutorial, where you try to polish off complicated combos and special moves, but missions are an entirely different matter. It sees you testing your skill by trying to accomplish certain goals within a time limit. For example, you'll find yourself trying to win with only special moves within a minute, or winning without taking a hit within 99 seconds. Overall, if you're looking for a solid fighter on the Vita, Street Fighter X Tekken is a great option. Well, that does it for today's video. Keep an eye out for part 2, as that will be coming up very soon, so don't forget to hit subscribe and tickle that bell. You can follow me on all of the socials to stay up to date on future videos as well. You can also join our growing community on Discord and meet many like-minded gamers to continue the conversation with. I'd like to give a special shout out to our Patreon supporters: Rhino, Skill Jim, Nano, Steve, Richard, Amy, Daniel, NSG Reviews and Paddy J for their continued support that helps make these videos possible. If you're interested in joining our Discord or supporting the channel through Patreon to gain access to exclusive videos and giveaways for as little as $1 per month, you'll find the links in the description. As always, thanks for taking the time to watch the video. I'll catch you next time.